What's the most significant you just fricked with the wrong person moment you've witnessed or experienced? I work in a law office and regularly have to go file documents with the court. I have learned, from watching one interaction, not to frick with the clerks at the filing window. A lot of people probably wouldn't believe how detailed the rules are for submitting documents to the court. There are rules regarding the type of paper you can use, the exact spacing of the heading on the paper, the exact measurements of the 2-hole punches at the top of the paper, etc. There are literally dozens of rules on how to format your filings. In my experience, these rules are rarely enforced. The clerks will reject documents if there are major errors, missing signatures, incorrectly filled out, etc. They will usually let things slide like your 2-hole punches not being precisely 3/4 inches apart. But there was one day where I saw a clerk take sweet revenge against someone who totally had it coming. I was standing in line, waiting to file something, and a notoriously huge prick of an attorney got called up to the window. The clerk asked him something like, "I'm really sorry, Mr. Notoriously huge prick, but you're missing some attachment to this form." He reacted as if she had just stood from her chair, flipped him the bird, and went to crap on his mother's grave. He starts yelling about how she didn't know what the frick she was doing. A trained ape could do her job. He would be complaining to her supervisor, and on and on. He goes stomping away, and she looks much calmer than you would expect for someone who just got dreamed out by this enormous douchebag. I get called up to her window and say something like, "I am so sorry you had to deal with that." She replies, "It's fine. He's on my list now." I'm curious, so I ask what she means. Her response was fantastic. She says Mr. Notoriously Huge Prick handles a lot of family law cases. He'll be wanting to file things here, and his paperwork is bound to land on my desk. For people like him, I get out the formatting sections of the rules of court, and I make sure he's followed every one of them. She points to my filing and says, "Your 2-hole punches look off. You see how one is higher than the other? They are supposed to be a certain distance from the top of the page. I'm not going to reject yours, but next time he drops something off at the filing box, you better believe I'm going to bust out my ruler." I say how awesome that is, but once he sees a reason his document was rejected, he'll just have an assistant fix it or whatever. She replies, "We don't have to tell him why it was rejected specifically, just that it violated some rule of formatting. He can figure that out for himself if he ever wants to have another document filed." She looked so happy. My favorite response to this question. Thanks for sharing. In high school, between classes, a couple of the defensive backs on our football team thought it would be funny to run full speed into the open doors to knock over the students that were leaving the classrooms. After seeing this happen a few days in a row, the football team's starting defensive tackle, decided to post up behind the door. After I felt the thump of my fellow teammate hit the door, I emerged from behind the door to find him laying on the ground. I reached out a hand and helped him to his feet. Then I told him, "Hey man, you gotta watch where you're going. There's a door there." I watched a guy try to steal a girl's purse. He ran past her, grabbed onto the strap, and tried to yank it off her arm. She was a lot stronger than he'd anticipated, because she pulled the bag back and sent him sprawling onto the sidewalk. She then kicked the crap out of him, screaming at him the whole time. As this took place in Montreal, people just watched her beat him up and clapped politely when she was done. She curtsied to the crowd, spat on him, and walked off. Having spent a fair amount of time in Montreal, I can absolutely picture this happening and no one being surprised. Don't frick with crazy French Canadians. French people yelling in French is cute. Canadians yelling in French is terrifying. The one and only time I have had a massive win over someone falls into this category. I was once engaged to the Vice Consul of America from Brazil. I was flying around on holiday and coming back to America where we were living. I was on a working visa, but had recently quit my job as we were about to move. She was being reposted, and so I decided to go on holiday for a few weeks, and had come in and out of the US several times. After being in a plane returning from Spain, I was dressed in an old pair of shorts, t-shirt, odd socks, and hadn't slept. I looked and felt like crap. The SAR guy immediately flags me over and starts grilling me over my visa, travel history, etc. He picked up that I had resigned from my job and formed the opinion that I was trying to sneak back into the States, even though as an Australian passport holder I can come into and out of the States pretty much at will. He made me miss my plane and took me into one of the little rooms. With the world's biggest crap-eating grin he told me I was not going to be allowed back into the States. I tried to reason with him, explaining all my housing stuff, bank accounts etc were there, and that all my paperwork was in order etc, but he was a complete bastard and was having none of it. So I casually dropped my fiancee's name and her position. He got a little worried. He asked me for some details about her, which I gave. He walked out of the room, his crap-eating grin definitely gone. He came back with a folder of photos and asked me to pick her out, as they keep on file photos of diplomatic personnel etc. When I passed all his tests he turned white. For once in my life I had the power over this little crap bird, and it would not have been a hard thing to place a call to my girlfriend and have this prick's job, and he knew it. All my documentation was in order and he was just being a first class C. Managers were called, apologies were made, tickets to the first class waiting lounge were arranged, and new flights were booked free of charge. My one and only time in this world where some dude looked at me and realized that they had just majorly fricked up. Drunk high as frick guy on the bus kept saying really rude things about this woman. Her husband right next to her, short white guy, gets in this guy's face. Fricked up guy gets up to hit the white dude. White dude socked him in the stomach and then punched him in the face. Drunk he got knocked out and his mouth was super bloody. Someone call an Amber, Lance. I was in a subway station in San Francisco, Church Street, and this was almost 20 years ago. There was a well-dressed older Asian man, probably in his 70s as I recall it. A particularly dirty panhandler was giving him a hard time on the platform, asking for money and being really aggressive about it. The nicely dressed older gentleman reached into his pocket, withdrew a handful of change and tossed it lightly into the air between himself and the street urchin. When the bum looked up at the money, the old man karate chopped him right in the throat and the dude went down hard. The bum didn't get up and the old man just calmly walked a few steps away and continued to wait for the train. That was one ice cold mother. I had a bully named Bunny, her real name, in junior high. I have mild cerebral palsy and I just had surgery. So, here I am in the bus line on crutches in a cast up to my hip. She mouths off one too many times. I shove my crutches away from me. I go flying through the air with my leg jutting out like a bad wing. I slam into her, knocking us to the ground. Her eyes are huge. I get my face 2 inches from her face and say I could frick you up bad. You are a piece of crap and I don't want to get my hands dirty. People helped me up. After that she would occasionally say something. If I stepped towards her she would jump. My little sister was in high school and this much bigger, fat girl kept putting her dirty sandals on the back of my sister's chair. My sister politely told her to stop. She kept doing so. My sister knocked her feet off the back of the chair, but this girl kept putting her nasty sandals on the back of my sister's chair, even rubbing her sandal in my sister's hair. So my sister calmly walked over to her and beat her in the face until the teacher pulled her off. I had a guy that would sit behind me on the bus and flick my ears. I was in 4th grade, he was in 6th or 7th. I asked him to stop and I was even polite about it. Then I opened his face with my metal lunchbox. At a concert a dude pushed my friend out the way, so my friend pushed him back. Dude stopped going where he was going and turned around to push him again. My friend turns around and dude realizes my friend is a foot taller and built to play rugby. Some might try and back off at this point. He decides to toss his bottle at my friend's face. After bouncing off his forehead, my friend tackles him down a nearby hill, and by the time I've gotten to them like 10 seconds later, wasn't dressed for hill climbing. My boy has pinned him down stomach first and punching the back of his head repeatedly. I pull him off and after a bit of him threatening to spend the rest of the evening chasing him down, I persuade him to calm down cause the doctors are scared of him and his head is bleeding. The dude scampered while that was happening and no one was reported dead the next evening, so yeah, I don't know who he was but he owes me. Punching the back of his head repeatedly. This kills the idiot. Was driving on the freeway in my minivan with wife and kids in the left lane. In the rear view mirror, I see a new model, green Camaro snaking through traffic, weaving in and out of lanes, cutting one person after another off. He's in the middle lane and we're all taking a slight curve in the freeway. Camaro goes in to cut off a dark colored sedan on the shoulder. As he switches lanes, Camaro isn't far enough ahead of the sedan and clips the front driver's side of the sedan with the passenger side rear bumper. Both cars go swerving off the road and spin out in the median. We pull over on the other side of the road. I'm checking to see if both drivers are fine. They are. Wife calls 911. There's dust clouding up the air from the cars off the road. They've both ended up in bushes and both cars are pretty messed up. We stay long enough to know if we're needed as witnesses or not. Cops tell us we can go. The sedan driver was an off-duty cop and the Camaro driver has just found out. I can't hear him from the other side of the freeway, but I can see him sitting in his jacked up Camaro he probably just bought, pounding his steering wheel with both fists. He's shouting something. Sedan driver is calmly talking to all the cops who showed up, just owning the accident scene. TLDR. Punk Camaro driver cuts off-duty police officer causing them both to wreck RIP. Camaro. Oh god, that's beautiful. Joined the middle school football team. Kept getting rhinoed in the butt by the biggest kid in middle school. He was 6 feet, easily 260 pounds. Wanted him to stop, so naturally I turn around to push him away. End up somehow magically hitting him in the face really hard. I have never ran faster in my life after that. Sorry Big Red, I didn't mean to hit you in the face. TLDR. I am a b-boy that can run like Forrest. In 4th grade I switched schools, and on my first day of school I found the biggest kid I could and punched him in the face. He then proceeded to pick me up by my throat with one hand and pin me to the wall. While working as a bouncer, I saw these two guys start to harass a buddy of mine. I didn't do anything because I knew who he was, but they didn't. He and I grew up in the same martial arts classes. We were both involved in football and wrestling. He is a Marine. He, however, doesn't look it. He is about 5 feet 9 inches tall, toned but nowhere near bulky, and a very kind looking fellow. The two guys were mocking him for wearing sandals. He blew them off and kept talking to his other friends. One of the pair got really close to him and knocked his hat off my friend's head. My friend turned to them and politely told them, "Hey, I get it. You two are tough and hate my sandals. Please just leave me alone. I am just trying to have a good night. Also, don't touch me or my belongings." As he reached down to pick up his hat, the guy kicked it away and tried to push him over. That's when the fun started. My buddy grabbed the guy by his knees and introduced the jerk to the ground. My buddy bounced back and barked at them to stop. The other guy rushed him and proceeded to make out with my buddy's knee. The first guy went to get up and shook hands with my buddy's fist. At this point, I waltz over. I grab the second guy by the back of his pants and drag him outside. He is whimpering in pain, complaining that his nose might be broken. I set him down and go to retrieve the other idiot. Upon returning, my buddy has the guy's arm behind his back. He passes the moron to me and I toss him out. The cops are called and everything gets handled. Idiot 2 had a broken nose and Idiot 1 had a bag of coke in his pocket. One went to the emergency room and the other to jail. I walked my buddy back inside and bought him a beer. The whole time, people are staring in amazement due to the fact that my little buddy took down two bigger guys in a few seconds. I thought it was hilarious. TLDR. Two drunk idiots picked a fight with my short Marine buddy. One got a broken nose and the other went to jail for C. Only do one crime at a time. Dang it. I am a pretty calm person, but when someone treats someone badly, it makes my blood boil. I have calmed down with age, but one story comes to mind. In 6th grade, this boy named Logan would constantly pick on another classmate named Dustin. Dustin was born with a defect. His legs did not fully form. He had prosthetics, and he had other issues which require him to wear a diaper. In all other ways, Dustin was a happy and cool dude. He was just given a bad hand in life. Logan was constantly picking on Dustin. He would call him peg leg, make fun of his mother for making a deformed baby, and occasionally made fun of the fact he had to wear a diaper. Logan usually got away with doing whatever he wanted because his family had money and power in our town. My sweet English teacher, where Dustin, Logan and I all shared a class, would send him to the principal constantly. Finally, it came to a boiling point. We sat alphabetically in class. I sat in the front desk, Logan behind me, and Dustin behind Logan. As Dustin was walking to his desk, something inspired Logan to trip Dustin. Dustin, walking with a cane, obviously tripped badly and hit the wall. I saw red. I stood up, punched Logan so hard in the chest that he fell over 2 rows of desks. He gathered himself and stood up screaming, "Did you see what she did to Emmy?" My teacher had this small smirk. She said, "I saw nothing." Logan never spoke toward Dustin again. Dustin passed away a few years ago due to health complications. Poor fella. As a mother of a kid with a physical disability, you give me hope that not all children are total buttholes. This happened back when I was about 15. It was the first week in a new high school and I was going up the stairs in between classes. There are a ton of people in a group making a ruckus, so I go to see what's up. There's this one dude who is kinda short and skinny. Then another dude who's not big, but just looks tough and rugged. Way too rugged for his age. Right when I get there, the skinny dude, who I later found out had a massive Napoleon complex, spits in the other guy's face, then turns to run away. He runs right into me and we get tangled up. The rugged looking dude comes over and beats the frick out of this skinny guy. It was not a normal school fight. It was hardcore. He fricked him up. Broken jaw, broken nose, missing 2 teeth and a ton of blood. Anyways, the next week the rugged looking dude sat next to me in a class we had and he thanked me for catching the dude who tried to run away. I never corrected him on that point. We were good friends from then on until high school ended. Turns out he had been boxing since he was about 7 years old, and his dad was a coach. One heck of a way to make your first friend in a new school. When I was bouncing, we were kicking 2 idiots out. Once outside, they decided to double team one of the doormen, the cooler in fact. Then the father of one of these numpties decided to help since his son was being attacked. 3 punches thrown landed, 3 idiots unconscious, and the father wound up in a coma for a few days. Since our bar was smart, we had camera coverage everywhere and the police cleared it without hesitation. When I was in NC for training back when I was in the Marines, I was hanging out at one of the local military bars. In comes a group of university kids from Greensboro who think they're cool for going all the way out to Jacksonville to hang with the Marines. Whatever, they were pretty chill and so everyone was cool with them. Until they found out that one of the guys there was actually a Navy corpsman. And one of them thought he could score points with the Marines by talking crap about the Navy guy. And not just a little gentle ribbing either, he went all out. Nope, that's not how it works. The branches are like siblings. They'll pick on each other all day, talk crap, and play all kinds of horrible pranks on each other. But only we get to do it. Anyone else tries to bully one of us and they all of a sudden become the common enemy we're all united against. So some half-drunk college kids talking crap about the Navy in a military bar? Not a good idea. Everything got real quiet all of a sudden and everyone in the place is staring daggers at these kids, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. My buddy leans over and say to these guys, "If you leave now, there probably won't be a fight." They took his advice and got the heck out. For those who don't know, the Marines don't have their own medics. They have Navy corpsmen assigned to them, including out in the battlefield. You don't mess with the Marines corpsmen. So a friend of mine, let's call him Eric. He looks just like a normal guy. He is very soft spoken and usually very kind. He can't take a joke on his expense and laugh along with everyone. However, Eric used to be a fighter. He used to get into fights all the freaking time, and when he fights to win by whatever means he has. So me and some friends were out drinking and Eric was with us. We sat down next to some other guys and we just talked and laughed and had a merry time. Then one guy in the other party was irritated at Eric because he didn't rise to any sort of challenge. All verbal jibes Eric just laughed at and returned in good manners, so to speak. So this other guy got more and more irritated at Eric over time. And this other guy was pretty big but not huge or anything. Maybe 6 foot tall and looked to be fit. Eric is 5 feet 8 or so and just looks like a normal guy. So this other guy started to really abuse Eric verbally and Eric just asked him to stop because it wasn't funny and it ruined the mood in general. This made the other guy even more angry, so he got up and into Eric's face saying something like, "You're such a p, you would never dare to get into a fight," and Eric, still sitting down, just grabbed him, tripped him and forced him down to the floor where he just controlled the other guy who was more or less helpless. Both Eric and the other guy got thrown out, of course. The other guy didn't have the sense to understand he had been beaten, so maybe 20 steps outside he tries to sucker punch Eric. He hits Eric in the face and Eric got really mad, so he just beat the other guy into a quivering mess on the street. Broken nose and maybe a tooth or two got knocked out for the other guy. Eric maybe a sore cheek. I wonder if that's the Eric I know. We used to spar a lot, but he got way better than me way faster and ended up doing underground street fighting in Arizona, New Mexico and Eastern SoCal. He didn't look the part either, but he was just ruthless and calm. Super drunk kid couldn't get into a bar because it was at capacity, but he kept giving the bouncer crap. He continues to get up in the bouncer's face and the enormous bouncer is saying something like, "I'd love for you to swing at me." Go ahead. Naturally, the drunk kid throws a wobbly punch and is subsequently picked up and pile driven into the ground. The bouncer then got a few kicks in for good measure. Legit could have killed the kid. That said, I doubt he will be getting in the face of a bouncer again, provided he still has mobility in his extremities. That is arguably how the famous bassist Jaco Pastorius died. I was a whitewater raft guide and had an obnoxious older man in my boat who kept throwing strokes on me, aka putting his paddle in the water when I was telling him to stop. He was fighting with his wife the entire time down the river and she kept telling him to knock it off because I guess this was the annual family vacation and plus she knew it was awkward for me to be listening to all their drama. He was being rude, obnoxious and mean. He had 2 kids in the boat as well and they looked uncomfortable and sad. We came up to a rapid with an infamous rock of, if I tap it with my left side, the person sitting up front almost always will get dumped out. Right before we came on this rapid, I had the man switch with his son, who was sitting in front left. Yes, I rammed into that rock and he got to swim down some class 4 rapids. He wasn't happy, but he definitely didn't put his paddle in the water anymore unless I told him to. The best part was when we got off the river, he stalked off bitching about how wet he was and whining about how he almost died. When he vanished, his wife handed me a $100 tip. He was fighting with his wife the entire time down the river and she kept telling him to knock it off because I guess this was the annual family vacation and plus she knew it was awkward for me to be listening to all their drama. He was being rude, obnoxious and mean. He had 2 kids in the boat as well and they looked uncomfortable and sad. You just described every family outing of my childhood. My father is a bona fide badass. One evening, he was alone at one of his favorite restaurants, and a guy would not stop harassing the waitress, so he just stared at him. After a minute, the guy says, "What are you starting at?" My dad says, and butthole. The guy jumped out of his seat to fight, and I knocked him out with one punch, dragged him outside, and stuffed him in a trash can. The family that owned the restaurant were always happy to see him, and treated him like an honored guest whenever he ate there. Sounds like your dad's default answer is also no. Some guy I know who's the usual internet expert on everything was going on about how to deal with changes in pressure in an airplane. Another guy told him how to cope with it, recommending the Valsalva maneuver. Internet expert got all huffy and insisted that the guy was full of it. The guy said, "Oh, I dunno. That's what I learned during astronaut training." Turns out the guy really was a multi-mission NASA astronaut. Fortunately, Mr. Expert was very gracious about it and we all had a good laugh. I think they shared a couple of shots of single malt after that. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.